This program is made possible by the individual members of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois. From the Rubloff Auditorium of the Chicago Historical Society, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois presents the 2004 Convocation and Investiture of Laureates, celebrating 40 years of excellence. An Illinois native whose early interest in Abraham Lincoln has led him to become our nation's leading presidential historian. A Southern Illinois business leader who helped make the Illinois community college system one of the best in the country. A lawyer and corporate executive planning for the future of the Chicago metropolitan area. A Pulitzer Prize-winning author and broadcaster who has immortalized the extraordinary lives of everyday people. And a business leader whose volunteer work has raised millions for charity while improving the city of Chicago's financial bottom line. Since its founding 4 decades ago, more than 230 distinguished Illinoisans have been honored as laureates of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, an organization dedicated to honoring those who have brought distinction to their home state in the spirit of that most famous Illinoisan, Abraham Lincoln. Each laureate represents a lifetime commitment to leadership and service to humanity.
The Lincoln Academy was founded in 1964. This is its 40th convocation, and its purpose is to recognize distinguished Illinoisans and to publicly thank them for the wonderful betterment of humanity that their lives have caused. We look for people in various categories of endeavor, people obviously who have shown success in what they've done. However, there always has to be that extra element. There has to be something that gives back to the community and something that makes people want to emulate the types of activities that they have engaged in.
The Lincoln Academy of Illinois is patterned upon the learned academies of Europe and is unique among the 50 United States. Members of the nonpartisan, not-for-profit academy are appointed by the governor, who also serves as its president. Each fall, the Academy meets to select the laureates who are to receive the Order of Lincoln Medallion the following spring. The state's highest award for individual achievement, its colors of red, violet, and green, symbolize the state bird, the cardinal, the state flower, the violet, and the leaves of the state tree, the oak. In addition to its laureates, the Lincoln Academy also recognizes future leaders by honoring the outstanding senior students at each of Illinois' 4-year degree-granting institutions in ceremonies held each fall at the Illinois State Capitol.
We regret that the president of the Academy, Governor Rod Blagojevich, is unable to attend this convocation. In his stead is Mr. Bradley Tusk, Deputy Governor of the state of Illinois. Now for the key part of the convocation. The traditional ceremony where we recognize the work of distinguished Illinoisans, citizens by birth or residence. I now ask that Mr. Peter Bensinger, a laureate and general trustee of the Academy, read the citation for Laureate Michael Beschloss. Mr. Bensinger.
Born in Chicago, Michael Beschloss is a historian and television commentator who has enriched our understanding of the past and continues to provide perspective on current events. A childhood fascination with Abraham Lincoln developed into a career of study that has seen him affiliated with such leading institutions as the Smithsonian Institution, Harvard University, and Oxford University. His research and writing have focused largely on presidents, from Franklin Roosevelt to Lyndon Johnson. It is rare historian who engages readers so thoroughly as does Mr. Beschloss. He brings an easy command of history, an accessible style to his role as a commentator for television, where he has appeared regularly on the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer and on ABC News. He is also co-chair of the Council of Scholars at the Center for the Study of the Presidency. With his current research on the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and its aftermath, Mr. Beschloss' interest in Illinois' favorite son has come full circle. In Mr. Beschloss' hands, we can expect another insightful portrait of the kind that prompted Newsweek magazine to declare him the nation's leading presidential historian. It is my privilege to present to you, as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, Michael Beschloss.
President Bush is not the first incumbent president to seek re-election by building on his prosecution of a war. But what are the risks and rewards for a wartime incumbent? We look to history with presidential historian Michael Beschloss, Richard Norton Smith, director of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library, and Mina Bose, a professor of American politics at West Point. There were 5 previous conventions where incumbents came during wartime to try to seek the renomination of their parties. How unusual a task is this that the president faces?
Well, it's often tough, and maybe the toughest was Abraham Lincoln in 1864. The Civil War had gone on for 3.5 years, and August 23rd, 1864, just a week before tonight in that election cycle, Lincoln wrote on a piece of paper that he thought it's exceedingly unlikely that our administration will be reelected because of the frustrations of the Civil War. He wasn't winning fast enough.
Growing up in Illinois, Michael Beschloss walked in Mr. Lincoln's footsteps in New Salem and Springfield as a child.
My main memory is that I was taken to Lincoln's home at 8th and Jackson Streets in Springfield, and the guide there showed me the chair that Lincoln sat in, and at the time I had a much more pressing question for the guide. I said, what did Lincoln do to his children when they were naughty? Did he spank them? And the guide said, no, Lincoln didn't believe in discipline, just let the kids run wildly through the house. And at that moment, Lincoln was the man for me. I felt that Lincoln was someone I could understand. And that experience led me to read a lot of books about Lincoln, child's books, and at that point read more generally about American history and about American presidents. And later on, I found that someone could actually make a living writing these things.
The assassination of President John F. Kennedy made a deep impression on 8-year-old Michael, who wrote President Lyndon Baines Johnson to request that Kennedy's portrait be added to Mount Rushmore.
There's some moments in history that I think everyone is haunted by, even non-Illinoisans, and Lincoln's assassination is perhaps about as high as they get. John Kennedy's assassination is another, and haunted not only by the loss and the tragedy, but maybe the sense that if that President Kennedy, and of course, much more so Abraham Lincoln, had lived, that the whole trajectory of American history might have been different. And so you sort of think, what if it had been the case that Abraham Lincoln, rather than Andrew Johnson, was the one to preside over Reconstruction? What would that have done about the race issue in this country, the reconciliation between North and South? I think our history would have been very different. So, it's something where there's a big historical impact, and also it's an absolutely haunting and fascinating story.
Beschloss steeped himself in American history, graduating from Williams College and Harvard University. As a child of the Cold War, his passion for the American presidency led him to write extensively about the personalities of the era and the turning points of history that symbolized the period. Case in point, President Dwight D. Eisenhower's ill-fated decision to allow one last reconnaissance flight over the Soviet Union prior to a superpower summit with Nikita Khrushchev.
It's an example of how history can turn on a dime, because if Dwight Eisenhower hadn't sent one U-2 spy plane into Russia on May Day 1960, there's a very good chance, certainly not that the Cold War would have ended, but you could have had some kind of understanding between East and West so that the crises of the 1960s, the Cuban Missile Crisis, which almost cost all of us our lives, might not have happened. And it's a big reminder. We oftentimes look back at history and think that things were inevitable. And when you think about events like this, you realize how flukish sometimes history can be.
Taking Charge, the Johnson White House tapes, has yielded 2 bestsellers in a projected trilogy about the LBJ years. Johnson's secret tape recordings of his presidency gave Beschloss priceless insights into Johnson's personality.
You listen to Johnson in private, you not only now know what he said, but you hear the voice and the emotion in it, the noises in the background. They really do take you into the historical moment.
The tapes reveal the president's growing frustration with the war in Vietnam, as evidenced in this conversation with Senate Majority Leader Mike Mansfield in June 1965 about committing more and more troops to the conflict.
It's shaping up like this, Mike. You either get out or you get in. I don't think there's much more neutral. I think we've tried all the neutral things.
At the same time as he was beginning to send Americans in big numbers to Vietnam and saying, go, nail the coonskin to the wall and let's have a victory, in private he is saying such things as, I can't think of anything worse than losing this war, and I don't see any way that we can win. And that, I think, leads to a very harsh judgment about Lyndon Johnson.
Beschloss believes the passage of time itself may be the historian's greatest ally in rendering an accurate portrait of a president's tenure.
Truman is a great example. You really need 20 or 30 years because you get information about these people from their diaries and classified documents that Americans could not have known at the time they were in the White House. But the other thing is that you've got hindsight because, you think about someone like George W. Bush. Will he be seen as a great president or not? That will depend on how the war in Iraq turns out, how the war against terrorism turns out, some other things that we will not know for 10 or 20 or 30 years. That's why you need to wait. Ronald Reagan in the early 1980s, a lot of people were very angry about what he did about the Soviet Union, felt that he was unnecessarily risking a new Cold War. 20 years later, especially given what we're learning from the former Soviet Union, there's more and more evidence that what Reagan did actually caused us to be able to end the Cold War earlier than we would have and on American terms.
His latest work finds Beschloss returning to his Illinois roots as he researches a new book focusing on Abraham Lincoln's assassination and its aftermath.
In a way, this really goes back to when I was 7, because when I went to New Salem and Springfield and got really interested in Lincoln, that was the first time I really thought, well, maybe someday I can write a book. So I went to my publisher in New York and said, can I write this book on Lincoln's last days? I got the idea when I was 7. She said, great idea. One condition, don't insist on writing on everything you thought of when you were 7, which was a promise I was happy to make. For anyone even who does not read our license plates, this is a state where I think Lincoln lives with you every minute. More of a religion, as I often say, than it is in other states. Here is an example of someone who really exemplifies one of the deepest American ideas, which is that to be a great leader, you don't have to have an elaborate education or come from a rich or titled family. This is someone who had about a year and a half of anything that could be called a formal education, yet, coming out of the wilderness, he was not only a great president, but a wonderful writer and a wonderful thinker, ethicist, even a poet. I think there's no one who gives you a better idea of what America is really all about. Thank you for this enormous honor. I'm delighted to be here with all of you. And in mentioning my little boy, the younger one, Cyrus, who's 7 years old, before we left, he said, you're getting this great medal. Are you going to be wearing this medal when you get off the plane tomorrow in Washington? And I said, I don't think so, but actually after seeing these medals and having this experience, I think I will wear it tomorrow. Thank you all very much.
Born in Carbondale, Harry L. Crisp II is a recognized leader in business and education who, as chairman of the Illinois Community College Board, initiated important programs that advanced the use of technology, fostered accountability, and improved the education of thousands of college students. The son of an entrepreneur who founded Marion Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company in 1935, Mr. Crisp grew up working in a variety of family businesses. Rising to president and chief executive officer in 1975, Mr. Crisp has overseen the growth and development of Pepsi Mid-America. As a business leader, Mr. Crisp knows the need for an educated workforce. For nearly 10 years, beginning in 1989, he chaired the Illinois Community College Board, during which time he also served on the Illinois Board of Higher Education and the Governor's Joint Education Committee. During his tenure as chairman, the community college system undertook an innovative program to identify the values that inform effective leadership and apply them to the curriculum and planning activities of Illinois community colleges. That effort to promote these values to faculty, students, and staff attracted nationwide attendance. And most appropriately, the Illinois Community College System in 1998 dedicated and named its Springfield headquarters building the Harry L. Crisp II Community College Center. It's my privilege to present to you, as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, Mr. Harry L. Crisp II.
I've worked on the bottling line and spent a lot of time on it, enjoyed production, and then later on I've even run the plant a few times, and when I was in high school I was running the night shift.
Harry L. Crisp II tried his hand at just about every job he could find in his father's Pepsi-Cola bottling plant. He wanted to learn everything he could about the business that his father started, selling soft drinks from his egg and poultry wagons in downstate Marion.
It could have been he was just getting cheap labor too at the time. I'm not sure, but it was something that I think both of us wanted to do, but especially I wanted to do.
Young Harry learned the value of civic involvement from his father, who served as city councilman and mayor of Marion.
I think that we always talked a great deal about being contributors and being involved in society, and you know, while we're here in life, it's a short amount of time, and we need to do something and accomplish something for the good of all of us. And so I think that's what we tried to do, and I've always thought of it that way, and I've always enjoyed public service very much.
Crisp attended Southern Illinois University Carbondale and served in the Marine Corps before returning to the company as general manager. He became president and CEO upon his father's death in 1975. With operations in 5 states, Pepsi Mid-America has become one of the largest independent bottlers in the country and one of Southern Illinois' largest employers.
Well, in business, I think it's important to pay attention to details. I think it's important to build character within the organization. I think it starts at the very top and works through an organization. And you have to insist on yourself doing things correctly every day, because a lot of things hit our desk, and a lot of phone calls and a lot of commitments, and you have to make sure that you always do it correctly, and that filters down in your organization.
As the father of 6 children, Crisp was naturally interested in education issues. He finally got a chance to take a hands-on role in the mid-1960s when his friend Paul Simon started pushing for passage of the Illinois Community College Act in the state legislature, an act to organize a statewide system of community colleges, including John A. Logan College at nearby Carterville.
I became one of the original board members of John A. Logan Community College, and the more I became involved, I could see what great opportunity it gives to people to better themselves and do the things that they want to do.
His service on the John A. Logan Board brought home the importance of the core values of community colleges, providing high-quality, accessible, affordable educational opportunities for the individuals and communities they serve.
I believe strongly in the first word of community colleges. I think community is a very big word to bring those communities together and provide resources that just a part of those communities could not afford. And so the word community college, I think, is a great word. I don't think much of the word junior college, because I sure think junior has grown up.
Crisp served 10 years on the Illinois Community College Board, including 9 years as its chairman. Under his leadership, Illinois became one of the first community college systems in the country to adopt an articulation policy guaranteeing the transfer of course credits between colleges in the system.
The taxpayers have invested heavily in the education of all the students in Illinois, in public education or private education. They invest heavily, and it's not fair to them and the student also not to be able to transfer those credits back and forth. And maybe under encouragement of legislation, we were able to get articulation moving, and to the extent it is today, it's still not perfect, but it's come a long way in the last few years.
As a business owner, Crisp believed that community colleges could increase their credibility by giving the public access to financial data. He pushed for the creation of an online uniform financial reporting system. Crisp also championed the creation of the Leadership and Core Value Initiative to incorporate leadership values into the community college curriculum and operations.
We asked the local colleges in the state of Illinois to ask their students, their faculty, their civil servants to all participate and come up with what they would envision would be good, strong values to encourage in their institution. So we started at the state level with very few guidelines. Just we would like to approach honesty and integrity, but mainly they took it from there and started talking about some of the basic values and how to approach it and how to encourage it. It has been a very successful project.
Illinois' system of 49 community colleges is now the third largest in the country and serves the diverse needs of nearly 1 million students statewide.
The Illinois community college system is the finest community college system in the nation, and it gives our citizens such an opportunity at a reasonable cost, and they still can stay at home and keep all their costs in line, not only the tuition cost, but housing and other costs. And even for ongoing education, it has been so wonderful because you can still hold a job and go to further your education, whatever it is, technical or whatever, or if in working with the universities, the community colleges have some great university courses that are put on at the community college by the universities, like SIU is very active.
Today, Harry L. Crisp II continues to serve on numerous boards, including the SIU Public Policy Institute, the Boy Scouts of America, and Millikan University. He's devoting more time to family now, but he's always looking for new challenges.
The other day when I saw Senior President Bush do a parachute jump at 80 years old, it renewed that there is some life left here and some things to accomplish, and I don't expect to be jumping from an airplane or even pushed out of an airplane at 80 years old, but that certainly is, there's some things out there, not only the personal nature, but also business and public service that I'd like to accomplish.
Education is important, and so is good basic experience. A part of my formula for success is education plus experience equals judgment. What we strive for is good judgment, and education plus experience is a way to build good judgment and create for us opportunity. To pass on the opportunity for others to improve their lives and the lives of their families, for me, has been a labor of love. I certainly would like to thank the members of the Academy. Receiving this award tonight is a great honor, and I am deeply appreciative. Semper Fi, and God bless. Thank you very much.
George A. Ranney, who was born in Libertyville, Illinois. He is a well-known community and business leader who, as president and chief executive of Chicago Metropolis 2020, is at the forefront of efforts to make the Chicago area a better place to live, work, and conduct business. A lifelong Chicago area resident, Mr. Ranney learned firsthand the challenges of living, working, and fostering industrial growth in a sprawling metropolis. He was thinking about what is now called smart growth before the expression was coined. Beginning in the administration of Governor Ogilvie and continuing through the administration of Governor Ryan, he served on state task forces examining transportation, education, and comprehensive planning. His knowledge of business, government, and law made him a logical choice to head Chicago Metropolis 2020 as it examines the issues that affect the quality of life of those living and working in the Chicago area. In short, Mr. Ranney is making the Chicago area a place for us, our children, and our grandchildren. It's my privilege to present to you, as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, George A. Ranney Jr.
One of the things we're trying to do is to really develop ways for these communities to work together. And to work
Nearly a century after architect and city planner Daniel Burnham drafted his visionary development plan for the city of Chicago, lawyer and businessman George Ranney is leading a new generation of urban planners and policy analysts in charting a new course for the six-county Chicago metropolitan area. The Chicago Metropolis 2020 project was created by the Commercial Club of Chicago to develop a regional plan to ensure the area's preeminence in the 21st century.
Very concerned about Chicago's future 20 years hence, particularly concerned as business people about how this region, not just Chicago as a city, can be competitive in the global economy. And that means really having a full region, all six counties working together rather than competing internally.
Ranney credits his interest in civic affairs to his grandfather, Chicago Steel and Coal executive Edward Ryerson. Among his many achievements, Ryerson headed this country's first state welfare department and led the effort to launch public television station WTTW in Chicago.
So I've always seen that kind of role of a engaged citizen who can do a great deal. And I joined the same company that he headed in part because I thought I would have more leverage in the outside civic world from a position in leadership in business, and that turned out to be true.
Ranney graduated from Harvard in 1962 and earned a law degree from the University of Chicago. Like many idealistic young people of the day, he and his wife Vicki went south to work in the civil rights movement.
In the really tough summer of 1964, we were in fact in Mississippi when 3 of our fellow civil rights workers were murdered. That's 40 years ago now, but that was a terribly important experience for us. I think we did a lot of good.
A self-described activist, reformist Republican, Ranney jumped at the chance to work in the new administration of Governor Richard Ogilvie.
He was a guy who believed in systemic change, was very, very courageous, and very loyal to his people and honest. And so I went to work for him in 1969, along with a close friend. And the two of us were leaders in setting up a new financial system for the state, in establishing a new revenue system, and ensuring that the welfare system worked right.
Richard Ogilvie is credited by many with helping to create modern Illinois state government and for taking courageous stands like creating the state income tax to fund the nearly bankrupt state government. Ranney was the governor's point man in developing the state's new revenue system.
Every thinking person knew that the state had to come into the modern world, but it was a very difficult thing. So I really was in the trenches on that issue. It was an issue that ultimately made Richard Ogilvie one of our great governors and a real mentor of mine, just a one-term governor. But it was the right thing to do.
In the early 1970s, Ranney led the charge to launch the Regional Transportation Authority in the Chicago area, creating a financial system to fund the troubled Chicago Transit Authority and failing suburban rail systems.
I started on developing a proposal with Governor Ogilvie's blessing when he was still governor. We put out a report. It came out on the last day of his term because we wanted it out so it couldn't be really suppressed. by a new governor. And that was a very fine report. A lot of people participated in it. And that became the basis for the regional transportation system we now have. It served us, the financial system has served us well over the years.
Ranney went on to chair state government task forces on transportation, comprehensive planning, and education, setting the stage for his involvement with Chicago Metropolis 2020. More than 200 members of the Commercial Club organized special committees to examine the region's challenges in transportation, comprehensive planning, economic development, taxation, governance, transportation, land use, and housing.
A key point that came out of this was that you couldn't achieve an economically competitive region without having a superior quality of life.
As one of its first efforts, Ranney's team worked with the General Assembly and Governor to develop a state bonding program that funded $4 billion in state road projects and another $4 billion for mass transit improvements. It was a good start, but Ranney says if more isn't done soon, Chicago area commuters could be spending a month of their year just sitting in their cars.
2 million more people in the region, huge increase. We know that for a fact. If existing trends continue, 1 million new cars, there's no way that we can handle that increase without significant change in how we spend money. If you just put those cars end-to-end parked, that would require pavement that would stretch from Florida to Alaska. And everybody knows that you can't build that amount of new road capacity in this region.
Ranney is also putting his own urban planning ideas to work as president and CEO of the firm developing the Prairie Crossing community in suburban Grays Lake.
It's a beautiful, beautiful place to live, and it's attracted a lot of people who share these basic guiding principles, including environmental protection and including a sense of place and lifelong learning. So this has worked out, from our point of view, in a most rewarding way.
Ranney sees plenty of challenges ahead for the Chicago metropolitan region, but the work, in many ways, is its own reward.
I got to say, I think being able to live and work in this region and not only get to know, but work with the type of people that I'm now still associated with has been a wonderful, rewarding experience as well. I must say I feel that my own receiving this honor today, particularly as I look to the people who preceded me, I feel as though I don't deserve it, and I certainly feel it's premature. And I say premature because I'm hopeful that over the next 10 years, I and others can make very substantial changes in how this region is governed and how the economy is structured. And that, to me, if we can make that happen, then I would think that I'm really deserving of this honor. Thank you very much.
Studs Terkel was born in New York City, but he overcame that indignity by moving to Chicago at the earliest opportunity. And in the 80 years since then, he has become part of the very fabric of the city, an essential ingredient in its cultural DNA. We honor him tonight for enriching the American spirit by nurturing and preserving our history as a people. He has done so through a remarkable series of oral histories, an art form he all but invented. There are over 9,000 of those oral histories, most of them deposited here in this building, his gift to generations yet unborn. Most of the people he interviewed are gone, but through the work of Studs Terkel, their spirit will live on and their dreams will never die. Studs Terkel has been awarded the Pulitzer Prize and the Presidential National Humanities Medal, and his name has been etched in stone high above the colonnade at the Illinois State Museum to receive the Order of Lincoln, a distinguished American from Chicago, Illinois, the inimitable Studs Terkel.
So we come to the trial now, the participants. The 8 are on trial, these 8 people we named, and it became celebrated the world over. Right.
For more than 4 decades, the Studs Terkel Show treated listeners of Chicago's WFMT to a daily dose of music and enlightened conversation, like this 1993 episode about the Haymarket incident and its role in the American labor movement.
The 8-hour day is something we accept today. The 8-hour day is a normal work day. It wasn't normal then.
Before that, it was 12, 14, 16 hours a day.
Politicians, performing artists, musicians, writers, and everyday people shared the microphone with Studs over the years. The Studs Terkel Show was a Chicago institution in the best traditions of the Windy City. Terkel picked up his knowledge of the world and the need to defend one's opinions in the rooming houses his parents ran in Chicago in the early 1920s.
A little men's hotel he ran, and then when he died, my mother did. Wells and Grand Avenue. And that became my college more than the University of Chicago, which I attended. And somehow, there the guys would argue back. This is pre-television, of course. And radio was still new.
Terkel trained as a lawyer at the University of Chicago, but he never ended up practicing.
I went to law school. My dream was, because Clarence Darrow was in the news a great deal, not simply the Loeb Leopold case, which is known, but many cases. He was representing those up against it, Clarence Darrow. In fact, as a novel about him, not a novel, a biography called Attorney for the Damned. And so I dreamed of Clarence Darrow, and I got courses in partnership and corporate law and real property. It drive me crazy. So I wasn't cut out for the law.
Like most of the country in the 30s, Chicago was reeling in the depths of the Great Depression. Through a friend, Terkel wound up working in radio in the Writers Project of the Federal Works Progress Administration.
I love theater, and this guy has a theater group. And I went there one day because I love theater. But a guy, actor, got sick. He put me on the stage. He says, do that, try it. And I did it, and I got the role. And so that's how I became an actor. And that led to being a radio actor. Chicago had more soap operas than New York and the West Coast put together. And I got a job, I'd audition. And because of my voice, right, I got a job as a Chicago gangster. The middle gangster, the bright gangster, and the dumb one. And I was the dumb one. I was the one who would say, get in there, you guys. So I became a gangster.
After a year in the Army Air Corps in World War II, Studs began building a following as a disc jockey in Chicago. The name Studs came from the Studs-Lonigan trilogy by writer and social activist James Farrell.
Welcome to Studs Place. It's just a little place in the neighborhood. The food is good, the prices are reasonable, and the people you meet there are, well, let's drop in and see what sort of people are around tonight.
Then television came along, and I was part of a group called TV Chicago Style. TV in those days was only on 6 to 10 at night. There was no daytime TV. And it wasn't the political and commercial powerhouse that it is today. It was just a new medium. So therefore, there was autonomy. You weren't in control of anybody, the writer, the actor, and the writer, and the director.
Practicing your speech?
Yeah.
Nervous?
Yeah, I am a little. I want it to come off good.
It'll be excellent.
Yeah.
It's a place, a neighborhood place, restaurant, near, we call it near Northwest Side. And just a place, and there'd be a plot line. But that's all, but the dialogue would be invented by the actors themselves. And how we got off on time, I'll never know, but we did. And so at the very end, it would say, dialogue by the cast. And at the end, I'd come on, and one of the 4 of us would come on and say, we came to you from Chicago.
Terkel's television career was cut short when his politics caught the attention of Senator Joe McCarthy and the House Un-American Activities Committee.
And I got in trouble because I speak out of turn, unfashionable things. Joe McCarthy was riding high, And so I got in trouble. I would not apologize, would take back, and so I got canned. But my ego was at stake, and that's what it was about. They said, why don't you say you were dumb, you didn't mean it, you were taken in by the... I said, no, but I did. Petitions I signed, anti-Jim Crow, anti-lynching, those sort of things. And so that was it. But if I didn't get blacklisted, I might not have written these books.
The books, now 11 in all, including the Pulitzer Prize-winning The Good War, an oral history of World War II, grew out of his radio work at WFMT that began in 1952.
So I played records and talked about it on variety. I read short stories, finally began to interview people, not meaning to, it just happened, musicians originally in the world of music, and then interviewing people on the street. And that's how it came that I did these books. A publisher saw some of my interviews in the magazine our station put out. Andre Shippern is his name, and I've worked for him ever since.
Turkle's more than 9,000 oral histories celebrate the lives of everyday people who experience history day by day as they live it.
When I did working, for example, well, what jobs? Basically, key jobs. Maybe start with the Bible. Stonemason, Tower of Babel. Carpenter, well, Christ was a carpenter, Mason, carpenter, farmer, agriculture. Then the role of the automobile in our lives. The guys who do the spot welder. The people who are not celebrated, so-called. The ordinary people, so-called, can do extraordinary things and have extraordinary thoughts. And so I don't prepare for it. I know about them, but I don't come with written questions. It's a conversation I have.
Turkle's two most recent books, Will the Circle Be Unbroken and Hope Dies Last, tap into universal hopes and fears.
It wasn't about death. It was, but it's about life. In other words, death has no meaning unless there's a life that was lived, and the life of some activity, a life of some meaning. And so basically, it was a tribute to life. And it was called Will the Circle Be Unbroken? It was the famous folk song, The Circle of Life, the Circle of Family, Will the Circle Be Unbroken?
At 92, Studs is working on a new book, this time about the many musicians that he's met over the decades.
I call it, They All Sang. Adventures of an eclectic disc jockey. Eclectic meaning all kinds of stuff. So that's what I'm working on now. And I hope I'm finishing it. I hope I'll finish it. People say, what's your deadline? I say, I'm the deadline. Me. And that's about the ticket.
I'm here tonight is living proof that if you hang around long enough, anything is possible. I was thinking, I've never been in soup and fish before. And so I looked in the mirror, putting on with some difficulty, the white tie and tails. I said, I'm the new conductor of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And then I realized it's all okay because the man after whom this academy is named used to wear a top hat, so it's okay. And with that, I thank you very much.
Born in Hammond, Indiana, Ernest R. Wish is a successful professional who took early retirement to devote himself to civic and philanthropic causes. A graduate of DePaul University and the University of Chicago, which seems to be featured tonight, Mr. Wish distinguished himself at the CPA firm of Coopers & Lybrand. At the very height of his achievements, which garnered for Ernie prominence in the business world, he retired 13 years ago to devote his full attention to community activities. But it wasn't the usual retirement. He was appointed Chicago City Clerk in 1993, and he later served as a City Director of Revenue. Ernie has been particularly active in the Chicago United Way, the largest local United Way affiliate in the country. He served as chairman of the board for 3 years and headed a variety of committees that helped raise $90 million for area social agencies. Mr. Wish served on DePaul's Board of Trustees for more than 25 years, including serving as board chairman. Surely, Mr. Wish is one of the busiest retired people in Chicago. On a personal note, when I received my Order of Lincoln, it was Ernie who made the presentation. It is my privilege to present to you, as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, Ernest R. Wish.
Jean, my mother, and Joan, my wife, were not only instrumental, but were the catalyst for whatever I've accomplished, because without that, I probably would still be working in the steel mills, because that's where I started, in the steel mills. And there aren't very many jobs left there, but I probably would have had that kind of job in my life were it not for my education.
Ernest Wish credits the women in his life for helping him develop a love of learning that took him from the steel mills to heading one of Chicago's largest accounting firms and becoming one of the most influential volunteer civic leaders in the Chicago region. Wish says he learned the value of helping others while studying accountancy at DePaul University.
It was not only an education, but it was, again, an explosion for me of understanding, of a feeling of a knowledge that I wasn't just a person in a vacuum, but I was a person in a society with other people who had needs as well as mine. And so I think in terms of whatever humanitarian bent I have today, that the Vincentians created much of that during those years that I was at DePaul.
Wish joined the accounting firm of Coopers & Lybrand in 1955 and became managing partner in 1975. Under his leadership, the company grew from 10th largest to second largest in Chicago.
What I do remember very clearly is the times that I was able to assist somebody in enhancing their life, assist somebody in terms of a direction they were taking or in terms of the things that they were then doing that created a better life for them. And not necessarily materialistic, but a better life in terms of their understanding of themselves and where they were going. And so I made it a practice, even as I left that job and retired and went into some government service, I always took the people around me and encouraged them to go back to school.
Wish served more than 25 years on the Board of Trustees of DePaul University. As chairman, he strengthened the board by enlisting some of Chicago's top business executives and added $250 million in new facilities in the Chicago area.
We acquired what was known then as the Goldblatt's building. It's at DePaul Center now. It was the largest project undertaken by DePaul through that time. I think the budget was somewhere in the range of $75 million. We jointed with the city of Chicago. We built out that facility and rented a piece of it to the city in exchange for some unique financing. And so we were able to do it kind of on a shoestring.
DePaul also developed new public service initiatives in the Chicago community and around the world.
We have a legal center under the direction of Sharif Bassioni, who is world recognized. We are very involved now in Iraq in terms of training judges, in terms of assisting the legal network, the legal system in Iraq. DePaul has undertaken that through Sharif's Center for Legal Justice.
Wish took early retirement from Coopers & Lybrand in 1992 to devote more time to volunteer work, and soon found himself heading a statewide task force on health care issues under then-Governor Jim Edgar. Chicago Mayor Richard Daley tapped him to clean up the city clerk's office after a corruption scandal.
The clerk's office produces a lot of paper because of all of the regulations that have to be copied and all of the minutes that have to be written. As a matter of fact, if you stacked up the paper against Sears Tower, you'd have 3 or 4 times Sears Tower annually of paper that's produced. And by the time I left, it was down to a third of one Sears Tower. So we cut the paper production by 90%.
Mayor Daley liked what he saw and appointed Wish to head the city's $2.5 billion a year revenue department.
We had a good run. We improved revenues in the 2 or 3 years that I was there. The net was $100 million. So we had a lot of programs. Again, the parking tickets were one of the areas where there's a lot of money involved. And we didn't do too good a job at that time in collection. And we started the technology revolution that had to occur for us to track tickets better.
What really does matter? The quality of life in each of our different neighborhoods matters.
Over the years, Wish has devoted thousands of hours to help lead some of Chicago's largest nonprofit organizations. Wish headed the Chicago United Way Crusade of Mercy for 3 years in the 1990s. He helped build alliances between its branches as United Way raised more than $90 million to aid community-based agencies.
We support 400 agencies here in Chicago and the suburban areas. And one individual really can't study 400 agencies or the various areas. And we market our services in 3 separate areas: youth, children, and adults. And so we understand those areas of need very well, and we allocate funds to agencies that perform programs, specific programs in those areas. And so it's really an effective way of fundraising for the best of purposes.
Wish served as interim state school superintendent under former Governor George Ryan. He says it was an eye-opening experience that's caused him to devote the remainder of his volunteer time to improving elementary and secondary education.
The president is coined the term "Leave No Child Behind." I would love to help implement any program that would result in leaving no child behind. But obviously, as we know, our system of education in the United States, and particularly in Illinois, doesn't create the kind of level playing field that we need for that to happen. So what I would like to do is to roll up my sleeves, get involved, and do what I can to make the situation better.
Without an outstanding system of schools, this country, over a period of years, will lose its competitive advantage and will become a second-rate country. What is it that we could do? What can we do to address this very, very significant issue? Well, for individuals such as ourselves, consider joining a local school board. Consider volunteering in your local school, either in the classroom or to complete other tasks that are necessary. And by all means, be vocal. Be vocal with your friends, be vocal with your elected representatives, so that we can provide not only more equitable funding, but also treat education in Illinois as a priority so that more funds are provided. God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you Deputy Governor Bradley Tusk.
Thank you, John. There is more to leadership than politics. In 1858, Stephen A. Douglas may have had the resume, he had the right background, he had the right connections, he seemed far more qualified for the part than Lincoln. But Abraham Lincoln did have something more important than all of that. He had the vision, the courage, the strength, and the perseverance to become eventually the greatest president in our nation's history. And when Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address, he wasn't reaching for a soundbite. He was trying to express an idea and an ideal. And with his great eloquence and great simplicity, Abraham Lincoln created a phrase that will live forever. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. That's a great line, but it's not a soundbite. It's an idea, and it's in fact one of the greatest ideas in the history of the world. Today, almost 200 years after his birth, Abraham Lincoln still belongs to the ages, and that's more evident than ever at events like this tonight. So it really is an honor to be up here with all these distinguished laureates. I'd like to offer all of them my congratulations and my thanks for the gracious invitation to be here this evening. It truly is an honor. Thank you.